Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the full council of Seaforth Town Council today, the 25th of January. Firstly, a brief health and safety introduction. We're not expecting a fire drill, but if the alarm does sound, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. The emergency exit at the back of the chambers will take you across the roof, down the fire escape, and take care as the steps may be wet and slippery. Or you can exit the way you entered the building through the police station and out the front door. If it is not possible to get to an exit, then the lift lobby is a safety zone in the event of fire. Under no circumstances should you use the lift. Please make sure that all mobiles and devices are switched off or put on silent. Any individual wishing to record the meeting may do so from the seats reserved at the front of the public gallery. Please remember, anyone wishing to speak in the public participation part of the meeting should raise their hand, wait for me as chair to gesture for you to carry on. Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence.
We've received no apologies for absence, Chair.
Item 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable peculiar interests other than peculiar interests, as defined under the Seaforth Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011, in relation to the matter on the agenda. Item 3, public participation. To deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public in accordance with Standing Order 3 and Seaforth Town Council policy. This is done first.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Madam Mayor. Sylvia Dunn, so most of you know me. I would like to refer to agenda item 11, the auditor's report, on page 79, which is the auditor's recommendations. But one of the statements is the council does not hold the repairs and maintenance funds for its fixed assets base. And the auditor says consideration should be given to the setting this up so that bills can be met from reserves rather than requiring spikes in the precept. I want to go on and say that the seafront is a very valued asset used by many residents and visitors. There are issues which I do intend to raise at community services coming up in February, but the seafront, I'm sorry to say, is looking very deteriorated, so I'm pleased to see the auditor's recommendation. I do know councils have to consider raising the precept yearly to cover increases in expenditure, but when it is over the rate of inflation, is there true value for money when the basics are not being carried out? So that's covering that. The only other thing is you've got 4 items on the agenda that are in confidential session. Can I just ask, item number 17, I know you can't give details, but the golf course damage claim, is that damages against the council or are we doing it against someone else? Which way round is it? And the 19 and 20 again mentions the View business plan and the View working group's report. When I attended the golf course committee last year, it was indicated that the public would be able to see this at some point. I know it probably contains sensitive information, but again, is there any chance or at the next council meeting in March will this be available for the public to view? Thank you.
Thank you.
Start with the last first. The business plan report, the intention is that parts of the business plan will be public, but we obviously have to protect the commercial interests of the business as well. So it'll be done on that basis. We'll do a review once it's adopted and see which parts we can release. The damages claim is against the council, so I can't say more.
No, that's fine.
The seafront condition, I would imagine you're talking about things like bins, which I know have deteriorated far quicker than they should have. It just shows you how extreme the weather is in Seaford. if you look at those bins, they're exactly the same make as the bin that's just on the right hand side as you go in the Salts Park. That one's been there for over 10 years and it looks brand new. The ones on the seafront look like they've been there for decades, and yet they've only been there 4 years. So it is an issue that the bins on the seafront don't last very long. We are looking at replacing those with bins that basically don't have any metal parts in them and don't have any moving parts in them, which limits your choice. We are looking at timber ones, but equally they've got to be ones that the seagulls can't get into as well.
Yeah.
So it does present you with a lot of problems that you need to overcome with one design, and there isn't actually one there on the market that we can see. So we're probably going to have to get some bespoke bins made, which increases cost. But that seems to be the only way to achieve every objective of the new bins when they go in. So it is in hand, it's just that they have deteriorated far quicker than anyone anticipated. And they have had hinges replaced on most of them as well. Even with that, they're still falling apart.
It's quite unsightly
It
for
is, I
our
agree.
visitors.
Yeah,
You know,
it
half
is.
of them have got the doors hanging off, they've got no doors, and
There will be some repairs done on them early in the new year, so that they are a bit more presentable for the summer, because we are going to have those bins for this summer.
Yes.
So they will be made more presentable, but there's a limit to how presentable they can be made, and we have known hinges to be replaced within 6 months. And
No, I
replaced
understand
again.
that.
So it isn't an easy task, unfortunately.
thank you.
Next question.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Councillors. Christine Brett, resident. My question is just a clarification about something that's appeared as capital sales. I understand we've got three places now that we're hoping to sell. The Holt, not on the Holt, one on North Way and one on South Down Road. It says this is for revenue generating project. Now, as I understand it, that means it cannot go into the reserves and it has to be spent on improving the town. Is that correct? It says revenue generating projects.
Okay, is there any other questions before I answer that?
Yeah, I wanted to ask if it's possible, are the plots going to be sold without line planning permission? And will it stipulate possibly that they should be eco-friendly, such as with solar panels, etc., and sensitive to the surrounding developments?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the intention in terms of the sales is that the capital receipts, which is a capital receipt, cannot be spent on the revenue account. So you can't use that to, legally, you can't use that to reduce council tax, for example, directly.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So what we aim to do is reinvest the capital receipts in revenue generating activities. So for example, we made seafront development plans
yeah,
and
that's
revenue
right,
generating
that's what I
activity.
thought,
So that's a good example of
Yes,
where we
okay.
could spend the money.
yeah.
You're right about the 3 sites that are potentially there, all subject to achieving plan permission. And all 3 sites will, as we did with the Holt, the first plot on the Holt, we will secure plan permission before we sell them. Obviously, if plan permission is not forthcoming for whatever reason, then the sale probably wouldn't go ahead. The design of the ones at South Down Road is very much in keeping with the environment around there. They've taken the lead from the view itself, so using gabions and cedar wood as well. They're also well hidden because the Bunban Bank's going to remain in situ. The intention is that they will also have environmentally friendly designs within the buildings in terms of, yes, solar panels, etc. So, but that's detail we haven't gone into yet. But we'll be putting that in our proposal to the planning authority when it goes in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Wilson, isn't it?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Hello. Really, about 4 questions. Or any news on the scaffolding building works in Talland, please? And I mean, actually, I'm fearful of going out. I think everybody is, because the rattle of the planks in my back garden and round the front is horrendous. And 3 have already, or had come down in my back garden, and fortunately nobody out there. And the other thing, they were blown into the garden. And it's at least 6 months since I've been able to legally to get to the back of my property. I have had a look because I've been in through one of the shops and when the fence blew down, but I have not been able to go in and out as I should be able to. That will do for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Um, obviously it's not always, we're not the planning authority,
No,
so we,
I understand
I know
that.
you understand that, I just thought I'd make it clear.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we aren't the planning authority, so we haven't got any enforcement powers to do this, although we get lots of complaints and we have been in continuous contact with Lewis District Council, who, to be fair to them, it's not an easy
I
problem
know,
to
I
resolve.
mean, I don't get an answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
It's all right. So where we are at the moment is that Aidan Thatcher, who's the head of planning and policy, is now dealing with this matter personally, and he met on site yesterday, I understand, with the developers. He was scheduled to. He's going to present us with a report, which will be at the planning meeting next week. I know you generally come to our planning meetings. So hopefully there'll be more information available there than what I'm able to give tonight, depending on what the outcome of the meeting was. We are aware that the property has been sold. It looks like it's a different organisation, but it also looks like it's probably a shell organisation because it hasn't got any assets within it. So we've now got an update where things are moving, but we're not sure how quickly. The indication is the new developer does plan on undertaking the works, is what he's advised Aidan Thatcher, and he's already putting in place contracts to undertake that. But I don't know any detail of any of that at this stage. I just know that was an indication I was given. But hopefully be a lot more to give next Thursday planning meeting.
And am I allowed to go to that, or is that something
To the
private?
planning meeting here?
Is it next Thursday
Yes,
here? Right,
yes,
sorry, I've only looked
Yeah,
at it
no,
tonight.
of course, yeah.
Did you want to?
If there's anything you can add, yeah.
We've been obviously in contact with, there's a number of councillors, and Lydia and I, district councillors as well, and so Sam and Alan, we've all been working together. The email that we sent to Aidan was because there was concerns about the scaffolding,
Yes.
and also that if it did come down, would they make the roof, because obviously it's been leaking, and there was concerns about that. So if I just read out the email, the last email that we had from Aidan Thatcher was that they're in the latter stages. This is what's come from the new owner, which is about the meeting, that they're in the latter stages of assembling his development team, that he intends to start on the site in the next 6 weeks, that the demolition and preparation works will take 6 weeks, following which new building would then commence. Aidan is asking for more additional information on all of this and the detail of the construction team, so the information he's given can be collaborated, say that one. In terms of the roof being watertight, this is one of the concerns, that if we require the removal of the scaffolding, we would not be able to ensure that such works would take place, as this would be beyond the remit of the planning system. As such, working with the developer, which we have been doing, to secure the implementation scheme will ensure such matters do not remain unresolved. And they said they will update further when we have received the additional detail on the timeframes. However, if the reassurance is given that the works will commence within the next 6 weeks, this is likely to negate the need for serving a section 215 notice to remove the scaffolding. So it is, and we are chasing him quite regularly
Well, I know.
and in contact.
Yes, I've spoken to Alan.
Yeah, so everyone's sort of keeping an eye on everything.
Councillor
And if I could just add to that, my understanding is that Mr Thatcher can't make the meeting on the planning meeting on the 1st of February, which is next week, but can make the following one, which is on the 22nd of February. I think that's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you might, although there will be an update next week on
Right.
the 1st of February,
But no,
the update will be pretty much what you just heard,
right.
but he will be here on the 22nd. And that will have the advantage of being able to update us with regard to what's happened between the 1st and the 22nd as well.
Right.
So hopefully we will get quite a lot more information at that visit. So we are moving forward.
No, I understand you, it's just that I am in the middle of it.
I know, I sympathise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Mr. Hill?
Have you stopped printing the full agenda for downstairs and the library? And I'll have to keep going up the library, nothing up there at all. Downstairs, you haven't got a full one, just a 2-page, what's got to be on the agenda. if I want to read the rope, no, I can't read it. So what's happened?
They have input printers placed in the library and downstairs.
There's nothing up to the library at all.
Okay. Well,
Downstairs, there's 2 sheets of paper. Not a full library, not a full, what's my name?
I will check with the office team, but that policy hasn't been changed to provide the library with a full set and downstairs.
Not one down there.
Okay. It could have been taken by somebody, possibly.
No, they're just two bits of paper
Okay.
with what's got to be on there.
I'll-
No
I'll-
full,
We'll check that. If you told us before, we could have made sure one was down there when you came in. But if we'll certainly check with the staff tomorrow, but there's been no change in policy.
you were the one I spoke about, wasn't it? I spoke about there's no gender.
Thank you. Any more questions? Mr. Bennett?
Mr. Roy Bennett, the resident. I just had a quick look on the computer before I came to the meeting tonight, and I was looking at the recommendations on the council tax, and I see that on the Gulf View that the return that the council are receiving is something less than I would estimate, about 1.5% on the amount that's been spent on the golf course. I personally find that unacceptable, that on a return of 20-odd thousand pounds, when I assume probably assets up there, a spend of over 2 million, that is an unacceptable return. Is there any reason why the council is withholding getting advice on how it can be approved, or are any measures being taken? And that leads me then on to council tax, which I see one of the recommendations is that 9.99% is given on the council tax, which really appears that this is to plug the gap in the general reserves, which this gap on the general reserves, has, it appears, has been created by a £250,000 shortfall on income on the beach huts. I find again it quite amazing that we're in this situation, and I think it would be entirely unfair on residents in Seaford if they were presented with a 9.99% increase on council tax, really through no fault of their own and not receiving any benefit for it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The golf course, I wasn't sure on your maths there, but I'm sure where you came from. But in terms of taking advice on the running of the golf course, we have spoken to lots of different professions within the industry, and people who, for example, have designed Celtic Manor, and people at neighbouring golf courses, and generally speaking, Seaford Golf Course is doing better than any of our neighbours. It may come as a surprise, but the golf courses in Brighton are running at a loss at the moment, well over 6 figures just for the course. Similarly, Eastbourne Golf Course hasn't paid its rent for 4 or 5 years because they run at a significant loss and are about to be repossessed. So the issues around are very tight in the industry. The indications from the industry experts is that it's bottomed out and we're now at the bottom of the downward spiral. But we've heard that before about lots of things, so it's difficult to say whether that's true or not. But certainly in terms of the golf course itself, the course runs at a profit. This year the profit will be in the region from the course of about £45,000. The View is run at a small profit, but what eats away at both of those is the loan repayments, which is £105,000. If it wasn't for that, the facilities would be run at a clear profit. But with that, they don't. And the aspiration of the council is to get into a position where they run at a profit, including paying the loan, which is what we're trying to achieve at the moment. So we are doing a lot better than competitors at the moment. The gap in the reserves due to the beach huts, there is that isn't the reason for the 9.99% increase. Any income that comes from the Beatrix is capital receipts, so that can't be used to shore up the revenue account in any event. As I mentioned earlier, the land sale is treated exactly the same. We have got Beatrix to be sold down there. We've got assets that have almost been paid for by the income that was generated from the sales that have gone ahead so far. We're not far short of breaking even on the capital receipt income and the capital expenditure to provide them. 2 more Beatrix sales and we'll be there. So that's, and we've got people making inquiries at the moment. We're leading into summer, obviously. So I think that isn't the reason for, it's absolutely not the reason why the rise is there. It will make a difference because if we do sell some more this year, but it wouldn't make a difference to the recommendations that are being made because it just means the money's coming in sooner rather than later. It's still an asset there. If we had business accounts, as in company accounts, our company accounts would show that this year we've got a £600,000 asset on our book that we didn't have at the beginning of last year. But that's not the way council accounts are presented.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on. Do members mind the young mayor gives us verbal report next, please, as it's got to leave at 7:30.
Sorry to have to change the agenda this evening. As soon as I've done this. I'm going to use the phrase that I always start with whenever I do this report. What a couple of months. It really has. There have been several engagements from our last meeting and many fundraising activities which have really benefited the cause in a positive way. Since the last meeting, which I think was last October, there have been several fundraising activities. The most major was a hugely successful another coach trip to Chichester Christmas Market, which raised £200 in total, and the trip retailed at £12 per person with 49 spaces available, all of which was sold within a week and a half of going on public sale. The trip on the 12th of December travelled to Chichester Christmas Market, we had an extra cash raffle on the coach which generated another £70 on top, so the coach trade £270 in total. All of which has been now given to the council and now in the funds. Over the Christmas time I had the opportunity to visit community groups and to help the elderly and took part in donating a hamper from young people to the Martello Rotary's Christmas Food Bank, a food drive where tins, non-perishable foods were sent to local food banks to help people over the Christmas period. January has been a quiet month as usual, but tomorrow is the Ilfriston Pantomime, and which they've asked me to do the charity raffle there as part of my cause. So this usually ends up to about £500, so hopefully by the end of the 3 performances we'll have £500 extra. Currently the funds, after paying in some more money from the next coach trip, which is on the 12th of February, we should be about £4,500, which is enough to start looking at purchasing the first version of the swing that we'd like to purchase. As I said, on the 12th of February is the next fundraising trip, which is Hampton Court Palace, which is a luxury day trip, which is priced at £45 each and is completely sold out now, and that promises to be a really fantastic money earner. After a meeting with our new project and facilities manager, we've decided again there's enough funds to purchase the swing and that we're currently deciding on a different spec and where to put it, but hopefully it will be actually included in the main play park rather than somewhere else outside, which is a really positive step. So that's it now, and of course keep updated with anything in the next few months. So I'm sorry I have to go. Thanks for listening. Have you got any questions? Brilliant, thank you. Well done.
Item 4 minutes, the following minutes approving or not approving recommendations as required. Full council, are members happy for me to sign those of full council 19th October 2017? members happy if we do it all on block, just to save time?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. So, we've got full council 19th of October, golf and the view 21st of November, community services 30th of November, personnel 13th of December, finance and general purposes 14th of December, planning and highways 5th of October, 26th of October, 16th of November, 7th of December and the 21st of December 2017.
Appropriate, second one block,
Thank you. Can I show hands, please? Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda, mayor's report. Take it that you've all read it and noted. Any questions? Have a proposer and seconder to note the report. Councillor Golden, Councillor the second, show hands please. Thank you. Item 7, the Parks report.
Mr Chair, thank you. My apologies, councillors, I haven't produced a written report this month, purely down to time constraints, unfortunately. I have handed out a list of current activities that I'm dealing with, which hopefully helps to understand where we are with things. I am willing to obviously answer any questions on anything we're dealing with at the moment. What I would say is that we've obviously put a lot of time and effort into what's before you tonight, and that's continued as well this week, which is when I was hoping to get the report done. I have actually spent a lot of time on the phone and looking for various items to do with the claim, which is in the confidential items towards the end of the agenda, which has taken up an awful lot of time. So unfortunately I haven't been able to get around to the clerk's report, but I will produce one, and I will circulate it, and it will be a public document obviously, so it will go on the website in due course. So my apologies, but I am, as I say, open to any questions that anyone may have.
Any questions?
Is it likely to calm down for it? Because I'm sort of concerned how much work you've got. Is it likely to get better, easier for you?
I think one thing I would say is we are working on improving systems within,
Yeah.
which we've got a couple of changes in the team. We just settled in from the new staff structure that we adopted towards the end of last year, and that is making a difference. I am getting more time to deal with the things I should be dealing with, and I'm not getting involved in the things I shouldn't be dealing with as much. I'm trying my best not to. So yes, the answer is hopefully, but the intention is we'll be doing a review ready for the personnel committee in March, and we'll have a better idea of how everything's going for everyone by then.
Yes, item 43, resolve final payment to contractor at their return. Is that anything on that?
Yeah, that one's being dealt with actually. This document I've given you hasn't been updated this week, but that one has been resolved. That was we had a retainer that we were holding on to for the works that were carried out at Herders House for the new tenant before he took the lease, and we returned some of that money whilst we insisted a few things were put right, a few remedial works. That's now all been resolved, and it's now been completed, that task, so that's one I can tick off the list.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Edmund.
As chair of personnel, I've had numerous discussions with the council about some of the items on there, and one of my concerns, probably following on from the comment raised by Councillor Elton, was just about trying to prioritise and also delegating some of this role to staff, especially Giorgio Rayburn to the RFO, although it's a consultant RFO. So I think what this is my concern is, I would like to see some more delegation of some of this authority, some of this to staff, because it then frees your time to focus on the core strategic aim of the council. So I don't know if you just bear that in mind, please. I think it's quite important. Because I think what I'm trying to say in plain English is, he's been paid a lot of money, and we don't start paying someone X amount per hour to do something that we pay someone maybe less per hour to do. Basically.
I agree entirely with that. We have there has been more delegation. There's been increased capacity which has allowed that, and the increased hours with the ESO from January the 1st will hopefully increase that capacity further. However, I am aware that the RFO, the ESO and the finance manager and most other people within the organisation are all fully loaded at the moment. But nevertheless, there is some tasks being taken on by other people, and that hopefully will increase as people get on top of their own areas as well.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Moving on to agenda item 8, District County Council reports, updated reports.
Just a few points. There's various events going on in the district to mark Holocaust Memorial Day in Lewis and Eastbourne. There's some exhibitions as well in Lewis, and they're mainly going to be at the depot. And there's also going to be an exhibition running at the Lewis Library as well. So that's going on over the next couple of weeks. There is a main event in Lewis on Saturday in the afternoon, but from what I can gather it's sold out, so that's really good. Phase 2 of the wheelie bin rollout is coming to Seaford in January and February. Everyone should have received an envelope just saying the way you recycle is changing, so you should have all received that by now. And there was concerns about the mixed plastic recycling that was raised, because there was recently in the press about China wasn't going to be taking recycling. But the company, Lewis District Council, use Veridor, do not have a contract with businesses in China. And they said they invested in plastics innovation to get the right grade product to the right market, legally in the UK and all Europe, and we have been exploring some new new alternative markets in Asia and closer to home. So that's just a few brief things from Lewis District Council. Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of things, please. Just to say, Lewis District Council had to review is, I think one of the things that came out from the Nebel plan, tourism, and Lewis District Council is reviewing its tourism strategy now, and I think a report is going to come forward to before council meeting next month, mainly because it's working now with Eastbourne Borough Council, and you may have, I don't know if you've seen this status, but basically the brand is actually Stay Lewis Coastal and Country, and the plan now, there's actually a website for it. There is a Twitter page, and there's also there's a big social media pull out on that. Following on from that, we had a meeting last week, and it's also been agreed that the brand will also be a Stay Coastal brand, so which will feed off the big brand. So that's and the Stay Coastal will be promoting peace sailing, New Haven and Seaford. So that again, that will get promoted. But if there's any issues, it's worth raising that with St. Jackie. He was a person that shared the meeting last week. Just following up from that, you may also be aware that something called universal credit is being implemented now. It comes to the Lewis area from December. From November this year, and the CAB will bear quite a lot of these people who will be affected. So again, Lewis District Council have actually increased the funding given to the CAB going forward for this year to help support the universal credits. So which is quite important for Seaford residents. So again, I think it's quite that we bear that in mind. So that Seaford residents. And one very final point, the website has been redone. So now the website has been Lewis and Eastbourne website. There's been quite a lot of complaints, and I think we had about 3 or 4 emails from residents. Quite a few things are missing. So if anyone just may know that it's being reworked now, again, if there were any concerns, anything that's missing from the website, it's not easy to navigate. And I think somebody with disability issues contacted me and said they couldn't get certain things. So if there are any issues about the new website, just contact your district councillor, so that, because they've been redesigned as we speak, and some of the things that got dropped out from the old to the new website will be put back on this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. If I could just follow up on Councillor Leach's comments, particularly regarding the tourism strategy. I find it quite ironic that Lewes District Council is promoting tourism, and yet the council approved change of use of the Avondale Hotel, which is no longer to be a hotel, but thereby taking away, I think, our only remaining hotel in Seaford. So I would hope that the departments of Lewes District Council actually talk to each other before making these decisions.
Can I quickly come back on that? Yeah. And I think it's an issue that, again, I did raise with, and I think that was where the listeners will raised. I raised it 2 times last week with the council, and they quite said many people wanting to come to Seaford now don't want to stay in B&Bs. They want to stay in help me out. Sorry, this new social media. No, this Airbnb. And actually, I went online that night, and that day, actually, I found 16 Airbnb vacancies in Seaford. So actually, there are many hotels, or some hotels, there are many vacancies in Seaford because people don't want to stay. And so therefore, that was one of the reasons why. So just to explain, just to answer that.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to congratulate Lewes District Council on their changeover from the recycling. I've been appeared on my drive this morning. The crew came along and emptied the bins. The bins were removed in a lorry. I now have a new recycling system. Well done.
Thank you.
Not often you get a pat on the back.
If I may just go back to what Councillor Winchester said about Lewes District. That's fantastic, but what is Seaford Town Council doing about encouraging tourism to the town? Planting any leaflets passing around. We haven't had tourism here for over a year. Trains killed tourism last year. Can you assure the rest of the councillors and members of the public that Seaford Town Council are going to be doing something to encourage tourism as well back to the town?
We do produce quite a few leaflets, which last year we distributed several thousand various leaflets along the seafront. We have 3 different distribution points now. There's one at each of the kiosks on the seafront, and there's one at South Hill Barn. And we ran out of leaflets. We use that many, so we are continuing to promote that. We are looking at a generic leaflet for Seaford, which would be more just generally what is to see in Seaford. But in our strategic plan, the development of the tourism promotional activity is not for another year, but in anticipation of that, because the idea was we'd be further down the road with the Seafront development plan before we start promoting, heavily promoting. But we are continuing to, and we have had a few little bits of involvement in some promotion lately, slightly largely through people like Dom at the kiosk, who we did a little bit with him. Well, certainly he led up with the Metro. We appeared in the Metro recently, and today we're in the Guardian. I don't know where, I've got a copy of the Guardian article today, which again was a picture taken outside of Dom's today. So there's things going on, and we are trying, and also through our filming strategy as well. We bring in a lot of interest here by promoting the filming of the town. That does bring interest. So a lot of people probably aware Luther was here again recently, which gets a huge audience, which again is exposing Seaford to millions of people. And that is the way to develop that. We need to now try and get the link of what we want to work on, and this is not something we've got the expertise within, is linkage of the Seven Sisters View to the word Seaford on the internet. So when people Google the Seven Sisters View, automatically Seaford comes into their horizon, and that would do more than anything else we could really do if we could achieve that. But we do need to employ somebody who's quite clever on computers to do that. That's beyond me, that. I'm not going to pretend I can do that. So we're going to look at that and see how we can develop that further, but that's something we're looking at this year.
I just made also just with the leaflets, that's great, but whilst I don't see the point of the leaflets on the seafront because the tourists are already there, people are already there taking those leaflets. Surely those leaflets should be distributed save the money, put it into a magazine that's national, so you get people outside the sea for taking these leaflets, not people here to the sea for local residents.
Okay, we'll look at it.
I can say that one of our newest B&Bs, the Buckle on the seafront, is going to be on Channel 4 Falling a Bed in the spring. It has been filmed, so I'm going to look a bit of advertising for seafood. Yeah. Any other questions? Right. Any?
Thank you, Chair. So obviously we've got increases at East Sussex County Council, which was 5.99%, and 2.99% of that is council tax, and 3% precept is adult social care. For a lot of people, you know, to see this year particularly as well, things going up and up and up, but a lot of the counties' issues is that there's the lack of funding from central government to this Spanish, yeah. So it's not something that we want to do, and we've been really careful about how we've formulated the increases of that. But 60% of what happens at county and the funding that is not seen, it's adult social care things and children's services and things like that, but they're hidden things that perhaps people don't see until they need them. Obviously, from a East Sussex point of view, a lot of people look at the roads and things like that, but that's not part of the budget, so the visual things, unfortunately, are deteriorating, which we are well aware of, but that's not what the council's structure is, so it's really disappointing. But on the good news for our town, we're looking at closing the Secret Recycling Centre permanently, and Councillor Franklin from the District Council and myself both went in before Christmas and spoke, and luckily we're pleased to report that it will be remaining open, and hopefully, fingers crossed, one day we can get back to 7 days a week. So that's about it for the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Downstairs in reception.
Item 9, final budget report. Pages 44 to 66, setting of the
They close these things. It's cheaper to keep the zip up, but does it mean 3 star? There was 3 stars there the other day.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Obviously, Karen's presented the report tonight in full consultation with myself. We are recommending at the moment a 9.99% rise. The main reasons for this are set out in the report. I should point out that since, as with anything with budgets, things do change as well on a very quick basis sometimes. And since the report was done, or the original budget was done, we've had the tentative agreement to a 2% local government rise in salaries. That has an impact on the budget that we presented. And equally, we've made plans to cover for maternity cover, which we need to make as well for the coming year. So those two things, in addition to the existing expenditure, actually add £12,000 to next year's expenditure. We should also bear in mind as well that agenda item 17 on the agenda, which is a confidential item, so we can't go into too much detail at this stage. But there is a sum of money mentioned within that item, and if that is agreed to, that would come from the general fund, the reserves. So that would reduce the reserves by that figure. I know a couple of councillors believe that because of the nature of that money, it wouldn't affect the bottom line figure, but will, because it's classed as an asset at the moment in the accounts. The other one, of course, is the agenda item number 18, which again has a significant potential financial impact. Although, as I alluded to earlier, I have been spending a lot of time with her this week to try and resolve that one, and I will be able to give more update on that once we get to confidential time. We did, when we were presenting this budget, not only look at the requirements of the council, but also looking at what other councils' budgets are. The main comparators we have are, of course, the other town councils in Lewis, because we all we provide similar services in a similar, well, in exactly the same local government setup. And Seaford is 25% lower in terms of its precept than the next lowest within the districts. It's over 100% lower than the highest. The rest are 50% to 60% higher than Seaford. So the expenditure here is, the council tax here is significantly less for the town council than elsewhere within Lewis district. That said, the town council element of the council tax is, of course, the smallest part of the council tax. If the increase were to be agreed to, the total amount typical taxpayer would pay to Seaford on a monthly basis to the town council would be £6.33 per month, which is an increase of 57 pence per month.
£6.
No, that's the monthly repayment. £6.33.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
you tried it, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's worth bearing in mind. In addition to that as well, it was mentioned in public participation. One of the things, and I know people talk about can we make efficiency savings. That may have been a policy of the past in terms of an efficiency saving is not doing repairs. The last year, and if you look at all of the community service budgets, you will see we spent a lot of money on ground maintenance repairs. That's because we've been catching up with years of not doing ground maintenance repairs. So things like replacing bins, replacing paths, repairing paths, all of those tasks, repairing roofs, repairing gutterings, that haven't been done for years. We've been doing over the last 18 months, and there's still more to go. We've already mentioned one, which is the bins on the seafront. But there's been years of not doing those type of tasks to keep the precept low. You can't have both. If you want to get the parks and the recreation areas and the seafront and everything like that to a standard that you're proud of, then you have to spend money. You can't do that while saying we'll save money by not doing it, which seems to be what we've inherited in all honesty. So I think they are important things to bear in mind when making any decisions. We are, of course, happy to answer any questions. There is a lot of information there I appreciate, but hopefully it's clear and people can understand what we've presented to you.
Councillor Lowe.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? About the beach huts, I was a bit concerned about the sales to date. I'm a bit worried about the word hopefully. Hopefully the position will improve next year. So where are we with beach hut sales? Are they not selling well? What are the prospects of them?
The selling, and we've had 2 inquiries in the last 10 days that Tony's been dealing with. I think part of the issue was that the time of the beach huts being built wasn't in our hands. That was dependent on getting the money in to build them. It meant that when the first beach huts were released, we were at the end of the summer. But we still sold 5 in that period. We've now got 15 left to sell. We are getting inquiries, but we're now starting to promote them ourselves. We were relying on Foxton's, well, I shouldn't mention it, relying on estate agents to sell them, and we perhaps should have been doing more ourselves in hindsight. So we are going to be promoting the site more from our own perspective to do sales direct, which we think will actually be more successful from the feedback we've been getting.
And supplementary to that, when is the wall in front of them going to be built?
That's with design and everything at the moment. The good news is that we haven't needed it.
Very lucky, I think.
Well, we always knew it was belt and braces, putting a wall and raised beaches. There was 2 things. The wall will be needed if we have an extreme storm. As we're towards the end of the winter, we're not rushing the wall development within this financial year. We're going to wait until next financial year but it's all designed. There's a few things that Tony is wanting the facilities manager to pick up before we go out to final tender. There's a couple of things that we need to tweak, and we've also had discussions with people other than the Environment Agency, which is indicating that we may need to slightly redesign the wall from the original design. So we're working on that at the moment.
And another question on maintenance. I was down in Martello Tower last Saturday, and they were showing me where the water, the ingress of water inside the building, which obviously is far from ideal when they're just having a refit with the lift and everything, and having to put up plastic sheeting inside to divert the water. So, and I noticed in the budget we've got £5,000 against maintenance at Martello Tower. I assume that's nowhere near going to cover the repairs needed to the roof.
No, one thing that we are doing, which we can't show in the budget, is we are pursuing grants more than we have in the past. We've got a couple of bids in at the moment that the facilities manager's done the last few weeks. We await the outcome of them, but certainly the intention with the Martello Tower is that we would apply for a grant to do those repairs. We can't be guaranteed success, we appreciate that, but we feel that that is suitable for a grant application. The initial £5,000 is actually to cover professional fees to get the decking analysed and reviewed, so that we can then come up with a specification to get a price to put the job right. There is one train of thought that says that will never be dry though. That is a possibility. We may be trying to do something that is potentially impossible. Maybe we can improve it, but whether we'll ever get it to be dry is another question.
I just wanted to pick up on item 155 and concerns about really significant poor social finances and concern of the auditors. And I'm sure I'm not alone in fact concerned about that. That's the lowest achieved, and we are in very, very grave danger. And I think we have to be very careful with the decisions that we make with the reserves as well as that, because some of the things that we'll talk about in the later part of this meeting could actually topple us into a very, very precarious financial situation. I just wanted to go back to what Councillor Lowe was saying about the beach huts selling and the wall, because the wall itself, I understand, is 2 lots of £40,000, is that right? Only one which probably needs to be built, but that is another quite significant cost. And of course in item 1.10, we're talking about potential income, but if we have to wait until we've covered the cost of the beach huts, we're then building the wall, we can't then build the toilets, and therefore we can't have an income from them. So a lot of this is a domino effect, because one issue is very much leveraged on another, and we are in a very difficult, precarious situation, and I'm really quite concerned about it.
One thing I would say is the expenditure for the wall is in next year's budget as presented to you. That is covered within the spend that's presented.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is there any progress been made on the Martello toilets? When can we expect them?
Well, I think that's the point Councillor was making, that we can't purchase the toilets until we have the money in. So it is exactly what you just said, to use a better phrase, it's a domino effect. So as soon as the capital receipt is received, wherever it may come from, it could be from a land sale or it could be from the beach, we can go ahead. We have gone out to tender already, but unfortunately the tenders were actually too high, and a couple didn't tender. So we're reviewing the tender process on Monday, and we're also reviewing the spec as well, just to make sure we get everything right. And then we've got some more potential builders to do the work. So we'll be going out to tender again, but obviously we're not going to rush that process, because we can't commission them until we've actually got the cash in the bank.
getting back to the precept, I think the fact remains that we're talking about an increase which is 4 times the rate of inflation here. Lewis District Council, I believe, has managed to restrict its increase to 1.99%, and East Sussex County Council to 2.99%. If you subtract the care for the elderly, social care element of it. So I think it's inappropriate to be negotiating or expecting an increase of 9.9% for Seaford Town Council. First of all, I think it's negative PR. Secondly, I think I appreciate the way it's calculated, and I think the calculations and the budget have been extremely well presented. But in real terms, the amount of money that it will raise, the difference would raise between, say, if we opted for half of that, say 5.99 to be in line with East Sussex County Council, and 9.99 is equivalent to about half of each hut. So it's a relatively small amount of money. I think we need to also look at where the money from General Reserve goes in terms of, I presume quite a lot of it is spent on litigation, for example, and non-budgeted activities. Perhaps we should have a litigation reserve, because these problems crop up year after year. And what I would like to suggest is that we actually, from when we decide what the precept should be today, we actually have a group to actually look at precept, because every year we have this discussion. Every year there are harsh words between councillors concerning the precept. Every year it's higher than the inflation rate, and I think there are very good cases. There's a very good case for Seaford Town Council's precept being more equivalent to the average for Lewis, for the Lewis constituency. But to actually sell that, if you like, to the people of Seaford would be extremely difficult. To get it up by 25%, to get it onto the average line, that would be suicidal, simply because of the way it's presented, because it's presented as a percentage rather than an absolute figure. And what we need to do, I think, is look at it in detail and then talk about it in the community and see what the general feedback is, rather than have this sort of panic discussion once a year. So I would like to actually propose that we go with 5.99%, which is the East Sussex County Council figure, which will go some way towards solving the problem. It's still 2 to 3 times the rate of inflation, and I think there will be quite a lot of negative press about that. But for 9.9%, I think is extreme and shouldn't be entertained. Thank you.
Councillor second, Councillor Nathan.
Thank you. I've now got Councillor Adeniji.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I totally agree. I think with Councillor Leighton, I wouldn't be supporting this as it is. And although I missed the training session, I spent close to an hour with the councillor here this week going through the budget. So I totally understand the reasoning behind it. But I just think for someone who runs a business, my first question would be looking at savings, and I don't mean efficiencies, but actually looking at our cost base. And I think what we've done is just gone for the easier option of just gone and pass increase to our residents. And when I studied this, I totally understand the need to increase our reserves, and there's no doubt about that. But I also do think we need to look at our cost base, because if we look at that first, then maybe they're on scale. But I can't understand why, for example, last year we had they proposed a 16% increase in staffing in wages. We actually budgeted for 197,441 last year. We actually overspent. In any business, in any way of life, if you overspend, the first thing you do is say, why have you overspent? You don't just say, we've overspent. Don't worry, let's try to put more 16% next year. So last year we've overspent. This year we budgeted 16% increase in staff wages, which again I'm sure, because we don't know why we overspent, we will probably overspend again. And I don't feel on that basis this is basic. I think we need to get our house in order first before we do that. The notion that our police office is lower is actually is part of the picture. It's not the true picture. If you look at the precept for New Haven Town Council, it's £540,000. So our precept is actually 50% more than New Haven Town Council. We spend more in wages. We spend at least nearly. We spend our wage bill is the precept of New Haven Town Council. So the SFF will say, oh, we're cheaper than New Haven Town Council. I don't buy that, because we actually cost more, because we're actually paying our staff. We're spending that much money in administrative costs than New Haven Council. If you look at Peacehaven Town Council, their precept as well, again, I think it's about £500,000. Again, we spend more than Peacehaven Town Council. So compared to our neighbours, maybe apart from Lewis Town Council, we actually spend more, we actually cost more. New Haven and Peacehaven have got very few bandees. We've got quite a lot of bandees, so we're actually milking our bandees. And our council should actually be a bit lower. So there is no basis, both in terms of the precept, both in terms of our cost base to actually do that. And I will just find my final point is that I was going to say, it's £6 a year. I find that quite patronising, because many families are actually struggling. £6 a year may not mean anything to many people. But so for many families, £6 a year extra means a lot. People are using the food bank. People who have bellies knocking on the door to pay their council tax. People do not have a choice as to whether they pay their council tax. They have to pay it. It's our job, therefore, as councillors, to examine this as if this is our business. If this is your business today and you've overspent, will you be sitting down today and say, don't worry, let's just increase my price by 10%? Or will you be saying, let's look at ways of doing things better, and let's look at how we can actually improve? And what I'm suggesting today is, let's look at how we can do things better, let's look at where we can make some savings, and then look at how we can. And I think the compromise proposed by Councillor Latham is a midway through. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Adamiji. In the best spirit as ever, I'd just like to point out that the reason for the increase in the salaries is the Personnel Committee did a staffing review and recommended a change in the staff structure. And I believe you're the chairman of that committee. The overspend on the salaries is not something that the officers have just done behind your back. It has come as a direct result of the decision of this council, and you were made aware of that at the time. And I take the point that the amount of the budget is different, it's less, it's the other councils, but the reason our salaries is obviously a lot more than them is that we have a service which is salary intensive, which is the golf course and the view. It's not administration costs, it's service costs. You use the phrase administration. Most of our staff are actually employed there. The salary levels are comparative between here and there, whereas the likes of Peacehaven and New Haven, they only have salaries for the administration staff, as far as I'm aware. I don't know if that was a combined figure we were referring to.
I'm talking about 306 for HFNGP.
Okay, fair enough. But the reason it's obviously it's averaged out over a town is that we deliver more services than they do in terms of open spaces. We have more open spaces than Peacehaven and New Haven. We have a lot more services that we deliver than they do, and that gets then spread across the taxpayers of the town. It is very difficult to compare because we're certainly not identical, but the main indicator is what your Band D council tax is. That's the way the government measures the resources. But nevertheless, a very good point you're going forward.
I've got Councillor Hammond and Councillor White.
You want to go first? Yeah.
Right. What I know about this town council, because I was its first employee back in the 1990s, I sat there with my little job waiting for the town clerk to find out whether he was still going to be the town clerk, because he'd been the community manager. I know that from the outset, good, honourable councillors said, let's not stitch the people up, let's tighten our belts, let's do this on a budget, let's raise things by a minimum, let's always undercut the rise that's done at Lewis and done at County, so we never have to say we're milking you like they're milking you. And this has happened
consistently. And the point we're at now, I believe, is that our piggy bank is nearly empty, and if it empties, yes, it will mess us up, but it will mess the whole of Seaford up. We have tightened our belts till the town can't breathe. And really, I know 9.99% is not going to look good to people, 50 pence a month, but the people who go to the food banks, my love, because I've been there, are all unemployed. They're all on benefits. They don't pay council. Well, maybe the universal credit is making the world crazier than I ever thought. Another point I would like to make is the reason we have more income and it appears different is because we have the number of residents of Lewistown and New Haven put together. Seaford has the largest population centre in the whole of the Lewis district, and we serve all of them, and that's more bins, that's more football, that's more wear and tear, that's more everything. And it's also more work for our staff and more staff. But ultimately, I disagree with you, and I'm sorry for once I agree with our town clerk, that you can only, as on page 47, look at 1.19, the comparators of a band B charge, and say, are the people in Peacehaven getting a better service than us? But quite honestly, yeah, they've got flatter pavements, I honestly think, you know. But that's not our job. But they are paying £86.08 and we're paying £69 and a penny. And what is £6? What is £6 compared to that leap? It's nothing. As you say, losing half of it wouldn't make much difference. So what's the difference? Where's the cut in gaining the other half? I don't get it. I really think it's time. We're going to look nasty. People are going to open the form. They're going to say 9.9%. These people are, you know, highway robbers and all that lot. Until they do the math, and when they do the math, it's nothing, and it all breathe out and know that whoever you want to blame for our current situation, whatever situation you want to blame for this, look, we've got something in the piggy bank. I think it really has come to the bottom line and we don't have any choice. So I propose that we accept the 9.9%.
Proposal on the table.
Yes. The counter proposal to Councillor
Honeyman.
I think say thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's always quite difficult. It always is every year, and I do sympathise with both Councillor Nathan and Lucy and exactly what Councillor White's saying as well. We get this everywhere, all levels of council as well. And we know the county council has put those up 5.99 if you include the social care element. Because their 5.99 is as much as our £69 basically for your Bambi equivalent. So their increase is basically what we pay in Seaford only. So that's quite a good another comparator if you're trying to find out how much the increase of the county council is, even though half of that will go to the various social care elements. I mean, in my own mind, I mean, I'd be happy with an increase somewhere between 5.99 and 9.99. So I'll hear some of the others and see what people want to sort of say at this stage. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just like
because nobody else has spoken, I'll come to you last, Councillor Nathan.
I just wanted to support Councillor White really and everything she said. I think you know, nobody wants to, everyone's going to moan whatever we do, so I think we might as well bite the bullet and maintain the services that we've got. I mean, and to, you know, to even consider that we could cut back on staff or staff costs is ridiculous with the amount of work that there is to be done in the services that we're offering in development plans. If we do have to cut back, perhaps we should be looking, and I hope we don't have to, but heaven knows we don't want to be cutting back on grants or on Christmas magic or any of the other things which people expect. So, you know, I think we've got to sell the 9.9%.
Thank you for allowing me to come back, Madam Chair. The reason the piggy bank is close to empty is historical, really. When the council tax was originally set, there was significant income from the golf course, and the golf course subsidised by a factor of 2 the funding available for Seaford Town Council. So it is only since the view build that prevented, that was a significant cost, and that income subsequently was not available, that we ran into these difficulties. So that is one point. The other point is that what I proposed was that we take stock of the situation over the next few months, rather than leave it to the end of the financial year, and look at ways of presenting a significant increase in precept this time next year, so that Seaford gets onto the average line. And 2 years ago, I did a regression coefficient showing the council tax for each town in Lewis constituency, the precept council tax for each town in Lewis constituency. Seaford was 30% below the average line, and Lewis Town was 30% above it. Now, I feel that Seaford should actually be on the line, not 30% below the line. But the way to do it is not by stealth, by increasing council tax by 2 or 3% above inflation each year, and then having this discussion each year. The way to do it is by looking at it properly and writing a paper on it, and getting the public to accept that this needs to be done. Thank you.
Calculations and thinking on what councillors Adonici and Latham have been saying about in particular things like administration costs. We are in fact seeing our administration costs rise by just short of £50,000 this year. The wage increases, superannuation, and employees' national insurance in fact comes to over £50,000 on its own. So there is a case to be made for making some savings on the administrations. It far and away outstrips the increase that we're proposing.
Can I just quickly come back on that as well? I mean, I've got to be careful here because I can't give too much away. That even on what we're talking about reserves, there are already potential personnel related issues that will have more increase, more demand on our staff wages going forward into this year. That hasn't been allowed for a year. So what we can do effectively, our staff wages and administration costs will actually even go up more than we've actually budgeted for, and that just shows how much we are spending on admin. So just put in context. So therefore, I think we can't, as Councillor Buffett, we can't just keep going. Just speak the call, because we can just charge more from the customers. So when you look at how we actually spend this money wisely.
Sure. It's worth pointing out that the administration costs is about 12.5% of the total budget, which is probably lower than any private sector firm.
No, it's 306,000.
Yeah, the total budget's 2 million.
No, the precept. That's what we're talking about.
Total budget. Yeah, the administration manage a budget of £2 million. That's the budget of the organisation. They don't just manage the precept.
Actually, if you want to come back, I mean, I run a business, and my staffing cost must be no more than 25% of my. So if you want to take that level, I have staffing costs right now when I work it out. But take a view away from that, because it's staffing costs from the view it's not taken into account.
Why would you do that?
Then okay, then in that case, let's take into account as well the staffing cost for the view. But we take the staffing cost for the staffing cost right now, showing the says we spend 306 on administration costs, and we generate back. We have to look at what we generate in income. We generate back in income the I think it was £400,000 for the community services budget, and so the income we actually generate with that. If you take the income you generate from your administration cost, it doesn't work out, because you spend over £300,000 on admin, but the income you got coming in is £700,000 for community services, and £894 for golf.
Yeah, but you're comparing a business with a public sector organisation providing services. A significant, and one of a small significant service that we provide, for example, is democracy, which is serving the councillors. We generate no income from that. but we could get rid of it and save a lot of money. So if you're a business, you wouldn't have councils. And that's just one example. There's lots of examples of services that we provide, such as planning applications. We don't know where we put into planning. We're never going to generate any income from planning, but it's a service we provide to Seaford. And that's never ever going to bring in an income. If you're a business, you'll get rid of the non-income generating sectors of your business. You can't do that as a council. You've got to carry the non-income generating ones with your income generating ones and your precepts. Otherwise you couldn't operate. We couldn't be a democracy if we did that. So I understand the comparators with private sector, but there's certain millstones that we have to carry because we're a public sector organisation and are democratically accountable.
I think, Chair, I don't want to into a debate with outline. We agree to disagree on this matter.
But we're carried on some of
Yeah.
Councillor Borman, and I'll come back to Councillor.
Yeah, could we have a recorded vote on this?
Yes,
Jim, I think my comment may be superfluous in light of what we've just heard, but the fact remains that just short of half of all of our precept income goes on administration costs.
Anybody else wants to add anything new? Go back to the proposal by Councillor Latham, 5.99%, seconded by Councillor Brown. Can I have a show of hands?
That's the colour flucture.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay, so taking the vote on the 5.99%, so alphabetical order, those in favour of 5.99%, Councillor Adeniji.
4.
Councillor Argent. Councillor Borman.
4.
Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Burchett.
4.
Councillor Bearfield.
4.
Councillor Elton.
Against.
Councillor Freeman.
Against.
Councillor Freeman. Sorry, beg your pardon, there's 2 Freeman, sorry. Against, sorry. Councillor Goodman.
4.
Councillor Hayder.
4.
Councillor Olivia Honeyman.
4.
Councillor Richard Honeyman.
Against.
Councillor Latham.
4.
Councillor Lower.
Against.
Councillor McLean.
4.
Councillor Walraven.
4.
Councillor Weymouth.
4.
Councillor Webb.
4.
And Councillor White.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 14 for and 6 against. That motion's carried, Chair. Yes, we've got the
Is the view?
There was a second part to my proposal, which I'm not sure whether we voted for that or not, but it was to set up a group to look at the precept in the context of whether we would be able to increase it to the average rather than having to do this each year.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Right, so can I have a show of hands of who all in favour of Councillor Latham's proposal?
Sorry, can I come back to that, Chair?
Yes.
I think something as serious as this, I'd like full terms of reference written down in front of me to vote on, if that's okay. Thank you very much. I don't think it's practical at this stage. It's full terms of reference. How are you going to get good judgment for the public?
I don't know if this councillor later will indulge an amendment to his proposal. And I totally agree. I think maybe I would like to see something brought back to it. So I think what we can do today is vote to bring back to the next meeting in terms of reference, so that we can actually, because in principle, I'm actually against increasing council tax at all. And so I think I would like to say what the terms of reference is before I start supporting a group. Because what I cannot support is a group set up to do a PR job to increase council tax in the future, which is not what I'm about. Yeah. So I want to. So I would therefore like to see something in writing and explain what the group is about, so we can then form a debate about that to go forward. So maybe we can maybe say look what we can do.
Yes, I'd say that.
I'd just like to elaborate on what both the councillors have said, that what we need to do now is set up a working group to decide the terms of reference to bring back at the next council meeting, so that we can take this forward. I think that would probably be we need a way forward.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Do you want to just circulate the terms of reference amongst councillors and then bring that to the next meeting?
I mean, we set the precept now for the next year, so it's, it's kind of not on the back burner. It does need addressing.
Okay, so right, now, take this in block. You recommended to set the precept of 709,949, which equates to the council tax increase of 5.99%. To note the projected budgets for the years 2019/20, 2020/21, 2021/22, and 2022/23. And to approve the transfer of 16,286 from the earmark reserves to the general reserve as set out in 1.4.
I'll say it because I have to say it. Point of clarification, Madam Chairman. Seeing as we just voted for a set figure, does that require a recalculation of the budgets?
The only elements that we would in theory change would be the amount that would be transferred.
Income from precept.
Well, the amount that we have projected to go into the general fund, so that would reduce that accordingly. So the budget would remain as is, but the amount we projected to go in general fund will be less.
So can I have a proposer?
Could I just bring up one point, perhaps, if I may, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind me sitting. Item 3, we've just agreed that we need to set up a working group with terms of reference, etc., to look into the budget. So maybe we need to defer this item until that working group reports back and council have some.
Sure, you're only noting. You're not setting them. So it's just that you've acknowledged you've seen them, and that's it. You're not making any decisions on them.
Okay.
Right, fine.
So can I have a proposer, Councillor, and seconded by Councillor Woolman? Do you wish to speak? Okay, so I'll take it to the vote. That we accept those three proposals. Can I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Item 10, annual return 2016 to 17 update, pages 67 to 74.
Chair, that's, as you're aware, we signed the annual return, and that's sent off. And that's now come back as approved by the external audit, giving us a clean bill of health for this financial year just gone. Chair, if there's any questions on that, happy to take them.
Any questions? proposal that we move this report? Councillor Borden, seconded, Councillor Werner, and can I show of hands, please?
Chair, could I just briefly mention, well done to Lucy Clark in particular for all the work she did getting that. She's done an excellent job in making sure that we have a clean bill of health. Well done, Lucy.
Item 11, first internal audit report for 2017 to 2018, pages 75 to 83.
Mr. Chair, following the appointment of Karen as the RFO, just have some implications for some of our policies. I did have a quick look through the policies, and George has done likewise recently. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Sorry, beg your pardon. Gone one too far. Sorry. Oh yeah, first term. Yeah, the internal audits, again, there's points on here that are raised, but I think, as you can see from the internal audit, the issues that are raised are minor ones, and we're already acting on the recommendations. I don't know if Lucy wants to add anything to that, but I think most of the actions are in hand. I'm happy to answer any questions on that, Chair.
Councillor Holliman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of things. It's not clear about how they're going to be communicated when the changes are done for the council, so when or how, and when they're going to be completed.
Sorry, you've gone the same as me, you've gone one ahead.
Yeah.
That's the policies review, it's the next item. That was my fault, I started telling all the policies.
Page 75.
That's what I'm on.
Oh, you want to-
75?
75?
On page 84, but...
No,
That's what you were talking about.
I was, yeah, but then I stopped because I realised I was too far ahead.
Well, anyway, on that 184, I'll come back to that.
Yeah, you can come back to that, yeah. Sorry, it's my fault, I
It's not clear on page 84.
It's agenda item 11, you're on. I just got a question about our insurance. Policy expires March 18. Would we be shopping around to?
I think we're on a 3 year, not the end of our deal, are we?
The next financial year will be the last.
Last year. Yeah, they normally have when we do shop around, we're going to, yeah. It's the existing policy, it automatically renews for next year.
Thank you.
Bit misleading, yeah, sorry.
Councillor Holland?
It's just on page 80 about where it says the council may wish to consider this risk when reviewing its investment strategy, about holding all the cash balances with the co-op and therefore not maximising protection available in the financial services guarantee scheme. I wondered what was being done.
Thank you. Funnily enough, we were talking about that today. So we are doing an investment strategy at the moment, which Karen started. So we will be, the intention is to bring that to the next council meeting for adoption.
Any more questions? Two together. So can I have a proposal that we take 1 and 2 together? Councillor Borden, seconded by Councillor Hader. And can I have a show of hands, please? It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 12, policy updates, pages 84 to 85.
Mr. Chair, got there eventually. Since the appointment of the RFO, it's become clear that some of the policies that make reference to town clerk and RFOs being one and the same, but that's no longer the case. The purpose of this report is to get approval to carry out the changes to the policies where it's clear who should be doing what. And what will happen in anticipation of the question from Councillor Honeyman is that when the policies are brought to the council for the normal review, those changes will already be made. A lot of the policies that are affected by this are actually due for review at some stage this year in any event. It's just that obviously we should reflect current practice and change the elements of the officers now so that we're not contravening our policies by virtue of having a new member of staff in place. I hope that's clear.
Councillor White?
Yeah, great. But point one is just a bit woolly. Point one could be read as saying, can we delegate to you in perpetuity power to make amendments ad hoc to the responsible roles identified? It doesn't actually, it's not tight enough to say that we're instructing you to make the amendments that were highlighted in the changes on the staffing review. It actually says we're giving you freedom to change those jobs because of the staffing review. There's a very, very, very subtle difference there. Would it be okay to reword that slightly?
Yes.
Yeah?
If you've got a suggestion.
All right, yeah. To delegate power or to instruct the town clerk to make the amendments to the responsible roles identified in council policies in accordance with the changes from the staffing review. So you're making the changes that are in the staffing review only. Does that make sense? Is that nitpicking to the nth degree? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
One of those days.
We'll all sleep better than I do.
Oh, I know.
Could you say that again? So don't get, sorry, it was
To
quite
town
quick.
clerk to make
Sorry.
blah 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 council policies in accordance with,
Okay.
rather than in light of.
Changes from, yep, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
If we could change the recommendation, I'm happy without going through that process to that, together with the other 3 points. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you. It's probably not directly relevant to this, but it's something that I've been worried about. I was going to bring to the town clerk's attention. Something that come up when the town clerk was off a week in December, I think, and I was trying to run around to get an agenda signed off for the personnel meeting I called. And I found out that obviously town clerk is the proper officer. The what happens if the proper officer is off unwell? So I went to look at the standing order, the council. The standing order says two things. It says the proper officer shall either be the town clerk, or in his absence, someone nominated to undertake the work of the proper officer when the town clerk is absent. So that's one thing we don't know is missing. And then I also looked at the RFO. Again, the RFO shall manage the financial regulation, but there should be somebody acting as RFO when the RFO is absent. So I think just it is probably a good time to make sure that we have something in place. Because by a standing order, we should have, basically what I'm trying to say is the business of the council should continue when the town clerk or the RFO is indisposed. The standing order does stipulate that, but we don't actually have a reality of that. If the town clerk goes off sick today, then we don't have a proper officer until we get locum. But the standing order does require us to be able to get a so-called delegated time. So I'm just wanting the town clerk to make sure that there are plans in place to implement what the standing order does require us to have in place.
Okay, I'll take that on board. We are scheduled to review the scheme of delegation later in the year, which is where that will be covered. So I've made a note and I'll put that on the scheme when it comes before the council for adoption.
Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, again. But just to clarify, you're not going to just go to the policies and just change them en bloc on one go. So I'm not going to do that exercise. You're going to wait till you actually go through each of the policies and update effectively.
No, I will change the ones that are relevant now that need changing to reflect
the
what
ones
we
which are
actually
due to be revised anyway. You'll do that anyway.
But then they will be coming forward for a full review, most of them during this year anyway. But obviously there's a rolling programme of policy reviews. We didn't put any on this meeting because we thought there might be a bit of a problem. So, but there's going to be policy reviews at every single council meeting for the rest of the year.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah. So, Councillor White, that was yours proposal to delegate or to instruct the town clerk to make necessary amendments to the responsible roles identified to council policies in accordance with changes from the staffing review 2017. Is that right? That's right. Can I have a second?
Second that.
Councillor. And can I have a show of hands, please? Yes, thank you. 13, Strategic Objective Working Group, pages 86 to 87. Establish a working group to review the council's strategic objectives.
Mr. Chair, as council is aware, when this council first started, we developed the strategic objectives based on feedback that we received on various things over the years. They are in need of a review because things, as with any plan, things occur that mean you have to change your timelines, etc. So it really is just to have a working group to sit down and work with to amend the strategic objectives so that they're more reflective of what we can achieve over the next few years, to give the new council and their committee position as well something to start with, although they may completely change it, we accept that. We're not looking at a complete overhaul at this stage because that would, we put effort into getting the rest of the targets in place, but it is really to just develop a more realistic timeline for some of the targets. So the volunteers come on that working group to work with myself and the facilities manager to implement those changes for recommendation to the council.
Councillor Latham?
In view of the pressures on the council activities, I think this is rather unnecessary at this time because we operate on a 4-year cycle. The strategic objectives are set at the beginning of the council and operate for a period of 4 years up to the next one, and we're only 14 months, 15 months away from the next council when presumably the next strategic review will occur. So to actually spend time setting up a working group and members, particularly officers, being involved in this at this particular stage, I would have thought was rather unnecessary.
Yeah, just what you were saying earlier, James, about how busy you are. I'm just a little bit concerned about that. So just echo what Councillor Latham said.
Okay, can I maybe suggest something alternative? Would councillors be happy if I just presented the strategic plan with date changes that are more realistic? Because some of the dates are clearly unrealistic at the moment. Bear in mind what we've been discussing around finances. So I think if I just present that to the next council meeting, I'm quite happy with that then. It saves me time. I think you just said the requires an order, Chair, if you're happy with that.
Now propose that the report is noted. Councillor Coleman seconded. Councillor Latham. And can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. Agenda item 14, Committee Chairs Management Group, pages 88 to 89. Councillor Adam.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm sure Council is aware that it's our corporate responsibility to make sure that our plans, projects and procedures are working in accordance with the wishes of the Council and that our finances are kept in good order. It's a physical impossibility for 20 people to carry out that task. With that in mind, the chairs of the 4 committees, who, if I could demonstrate, have enormous ability in outside activities, from managing a very successful shop over a number of years to managing an international consultancy. So the 4 chairs of the groups stated in this report got together and decided that it would be in the council's interest for them to, I wouldn't say hold the town clerk to account, but certainly to meet with the town clerk at regular intervals to discuss the way in which the council is performing, and then to bring any necessary information back to full council as and when required. We are not trying to run a monopoly. The meeting is open to any councillor to put forward any ideas, discussions or worries or concerns that they have, which the group would look at. We do not make any corporate decisions in that meeting, we merely make recommendations. So I commend this report to council on that basis.
Councillor
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm completely against this. I think it's making a power structure that we don't need. I think it's another tier. I think it was the last full council that we talked about whether to have a town council leader or not, who was going to oversee and work with the town clerk. And I think this is just bringing this in by the back door. I don't think it's got any accountability. I think it disempowers the committee members that put in their time just to know that they're the chair of their committee is going off and meeting with others and discussing. And although you said it hasn't got any power, no decisions can be made at these meetings. But I don't find it acceptable that the rest of us councillors have to put our questions in writing and are not allowed to talk at this meeting. I'm very much against it, and I'm rather worried that I just noted this when James, the clerk, gave us his spreadsheet, that number 17, it says review the staff structure and report back to the chairman's group, which apparently we haven't voted on yet.
I obviously have been aware of this going on, and what I was actually going to ask is, can we know when the dates of the meetings are? Because obviously we haven't known when any of the dates of the meetings have been on so far, and I don't actually know how many meetings she's had on. The only term I don't really quite like is the management term, but that's just the title. It's just a shame that all of us can't be involved in this, but I know when I spoke to a councillor about this a couple of months ago, that we were told, it's just to keep an eye on what's going on and making sure there's regular communications with the town clerk. But I do think it would be quite nice if there was more people sort of aware of what's being discussed, because also we haven't heard anything that what's been discussed so far.
The reason that we didn't publish the dates of the meetings is because they haven't been ratified by council at that particular time, and we're therefore kind of not legal, if you like. We're quite happy to publish minutes that past people have already done it, just kept a record of the meeting. Quite happy for that to be put into the council domain as of now, if this is approved.
Any comments?
Thank you. Yeah, propose that we support this.
Thank you. Is that fine to second that? Councillor Howson, do you want to speak on it? Can we have a recorded vote? Yes, certainly.
Can I just clarify the proposal is as per the report? Yes. That's the correct proposal. Okay, so those in favour of the proposal as presented on the report?
Can I just ask, noting that there is a review of the staff structure and the report going back to the chairman's group, is this any more information than you would normally give to chairmen individually?
Probably that sort of communication would perhaps only be carried out with the chair of personnel ordinarily, in advance of it coming to the personnel committee.
But this is all information that would have gone to at least one chair under normal circumstances?
Yes. Yeah, I think that from my perspective, yes. I mean, I've neither. This was a councillor initiative, this project, and I've, in all honesty, I've found some of it quite useful. But equally, I can see the other side of the coin where some people councillors may feel excluded, and that's something that I think we need to be as transparent as possible. with what goes on in that meeting. What I certainly will not be part of is something that's secretive and isn't communicated to the other councillors.
That is where my question came from. This is information that would already be feeding through, just not the same as channels.
Chair, you can call it what you like, you know, and I do support it, but basically, in most tiers of government, in other government, there are committees of governance, between the directors of those affiliations. It's no different, it's fine, it's just a thing that people can update the clerk and things are going on, and that's simple, and to be fed back down through the channels, and that is nothing, no hidden agenda here. It's to support the clerk and obviously to get awareness from the councils to what's going on. That's it. It's just to make it run smoothly for everybody. Thank you, Chair.
I kind of resisted. I said to myself, I won't speak on this matter. But those of you who are aware, obviously, I'm against having a leader. I spoke against having a leader when the motion came to the council. But I'm also increasingly aware, and as Councillor White mentioned, that as chair personnel, for example, or chair of golf, if I have to wait 3 months until something comes before the agenda, and with that 3 months, what the town clerk does on golf matters doesn't get discussed until that time. So there is this gap between what the town clerk does on each individual committee and when the members actually are aware of it. So this isn't about anyone trying to control the town clerk, and it's quite clear, it's open debate, but it's just about saying to town clerk, we want to be able to sort of know what you're doing on this thing now. We don't want to just wait until 3 months' time. That's what it's all about. There's nothing secretive about it. Members can attend. Maybe they learn about putting your line in question occasionally here or there, but it's got to be an open forum, and I will be part of anything that takes away the right of members to hold the town clerk collectively to account.
Come back on that. As a member of the Personnel Committee, I expect to know what's going on, and if the chair needs to update me on something, I want to be included. I don't want that chair to just be talking to other chairs, I'm afraid. Why am I on a committee if that's what's happening? That I'm disempowered between each personnel meeting or each planning meeting or whatever it is.
Councillor White?
I'm so sorry. Following on from what you've just said, does this structure empower the committee chairs to make decisions on their own without?
No.
Any decision must come back to council.
I just had a question for the town clerk. You mentioned there's pros and cons. Do you find that the pros outweigh the cons?
I think a lot of the cons are and it's very similar to any democracy system, really. Those who are not at the table feel is less valued. And a classic example is since the cabinet system came in principal authorities, a lot of the backbench councillors for a long time felt as if they were being excluded from a lot of things, and that was an issue. And you could say this is akin to that. The difference being, though, that there's no power to make decisions at this meeting. And I think, I haven't looked at it in detail, but to me, if other councillors, from my perspective, if other councillors wanted to come along and observe, then I've got an issue with that, personally. I think it should be open and transparent, and that's what I would expect it to be.
Just to refresh it, can other councillors come along? Have they done before?
Yes. They haven't so far because we haven't ratified it.
I think, to be fair,
you're quite welcome to come along.
To be fair to the other councillors who have been involved, I wasn't convinced this was a good thing in advance. There has been some benefits.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the benefits outweigh the cons because I'm not sure whether they do or not. But there has been some benefits, but equally I was very concerned that it could be seen as being something where people are being excluded, and that's not what I want. I want to make sure all councillors are involved in what we do. And I do hear what councillors are saying.
Councillor Freeman, and then we'll go to the votes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said, the Mayor is at present chairman of the Planning and Highways Committee. Would the Mayor, if they're not one of the chairs, be included in this meeting, pleasure of course.
No, not as this stands. There's actually, and I didn't want to bring this up, there may be a potential anomaly as well that the chair of personnel is not in that as well. You're down as the Golf and View chair, and perhaps in hindsight one of the positions should have been the chair of personnel, but the mayor's not included either.
Yeah, no, I don't want to, but however, just to clarify then, James, are you suggesting that you may have to amend that then?
It's not my report. I'm bringing that to your attention. You know, I think just mentioning that the chair of personnel, although we clearly have discussed some issues that then are brought to the personnel committee, then that is not on there as one of the chair posts.
So Chair, we can amend that to include that and all sorts of order.
So you're amending your proposal to include mayor and chair of personnel.
And also to the council's campaign.
Is there? 4.4. Is there? 4.4.
Who seconded it?
Yeah, I did.
Did you agree with that, Chair?
Well, just another update on this. I mean, you had exempt items in this meeting as well. I know we're all councillors anyway, but are there bits where certain people maybe not want to hear what we're talking about, where it doesn't really quite work like that?
No, I think it perhaps occasionally, potentially could be something that's exempt from the public, but not necessarily exempt from the council. It is a council meeting, not a...
Just quickly. Yeah, like obviously sometimes as you know, example of what Councillor Adamiji said, you know, 3 months of the COVID down the line, you want to know something in the middle of that. I mean, some of the negotiations that you do as officers are pretty complex, and you don't necessarily want to have a complex update. We're not necessarily going to understand everything anyway. That's why it's sort of more that side of things really, as opposed to pure exempt. But work in progress can be a bit. Yeah, it can be a bit tricky.
I think we avoid. I certainly don't want to get in the position of micromanaging what we do, and I think that's the case with the existing group. But there may be occasions when it's useful to discuss what's happening there, to get the sounding of the councillors' views, with a view to then present something later to the committee.
Councillor Hanlon?
It's still a nitpicking point. I mean, why we being there we go. It says 4.3, any councillor with concerns or questions address them in writing to the management group member. Well, if they attend the meeting but they're not allowed to talk, can they write the question down and then give it to the group member? Because that way they can still, but they just can't actually physically say it or verbally say it.
The reason that we ask the questions in writing is so that we don't miss anything during the meeting, because memory tends to...
I just thought this is a way around this, we can actually write it down.
Can I just follow up on that?
Councillor Freeman and then Councillor Adamiji.
Would the chairs of the grievance and discipline and the appeals committee also be included in this?
I don't think they do. They don't meet very often.
I know, but included the chair of personnel. Surely the other 3 subcommittees should be included as well.
There may be an issue with those in some instances, because if you're, for example, I may have taken a sounding, I'm not saying I have, on a potential disciplinary issue. If you've got the chair of the appeals committee there, then they're then prejudiced. So they couldn't then deal with that matter when it came to a disciplinary appeal matter. I'm just using that as an example. It may muddy the waters. There could be.
Okay. Right. Can we go to the vote now?
Yes, sorry, Chair. Does Councillor Lowe still want to record?
Yeah, I've got it. Okay. Okay, so the amended motion is the same as what's there originally, but with the addition of the mayor and the chair of personnel to the group. So those in favour of the motion as presented, Councillor Adamiji?
Yes, 4.
Councillor Argent? 4. Councillor Bourne?
4.
Councillor Brown?
4.
Councillor Birchard?
4.
Councillor Bearfield? 4. Councillor Elton.
4.
Councillor Lindsay Freeman.
Abstain.
Councillor Nick Freeman.
4.
Councillor Goodman.
4.
Councillor Hayder.
4.
Councillor Olivia Honeyman.
4.
Councillor Richard Honeyman.
Abstain.
Councillor Latham.
4.
Councillor Lower.
Against.
Councillor McLean.
Against.
Councillor Walraven.
4.
Councillor Weymouth.
4.
Councillor Webb.
4.
And Councillor White.
4.
Okay, that motion is carried. 2 abstentions, 2 against, and 16 in favour.
Agenda 15, item 15, Martello Tower Entertainment Policy, pages 90 to 101.
Thank you, Chair. This has obviously been a bit of a contentious issue for some time within the council, and we did start looking at developing a policy for this. Bear in mind we have 39 policies to review this year. We didn't want to create from scratch. We didn't want to spend time dealing with a policy which, when we looked into it further, was actually not possible for the council to enforce. There has been a few comparisons made with other councils' policies, but those councils where they are providing a policy on busking tend to be licensing and environmental authorities, so they have statutory powers legal powers that we do not have, and they have responsibilities that we do not have. And even those authorities where, so in our area, that would be Lewis District, even those authorities where they do have policies, the majority are moving towards what seems to have been a model created by Liverpool Council, which is a very light touch one, and I sent an email earlier today with the details of that, which show the policy at Brighton, which is very similar and repeated at places like Milton Keynes and 1 or 2 other places around the country. When you read the wording, very, very similar, and as I say, equally in Liverpool. So there's that one issue. The other issue is the legal responsibilities, which is being raised as well. If the buskers perform, we don't have any necessary legal responsibility to police the performance rights on behalf of that organisation or any other responsibilities like that. And we have public liability insurance already for our open spaces. But they're responsible for their own insurance if they want to take out insurance. Someone can still make a claim against them if they're not insured, if in the unlikely event they cause some injury. So these issues around legal responsibility are actually a slight red herring, unless we go down the route of doing what no other authority does, which is, it seems, go into the detail of taking bookings for buskers. You then put yourself in a position where you are taking on responsibility for them because they're then part of your service delivery. So therefore you do become responsible for managing their licences and things like that. So you're creating a rod for your own back. The other issue is that in terms of legal responsibilities, we need to be very careful in setting up a policy which actually puts staff in a position where they cannot carry out their job as required by this council. You have a legal responsibility to the care of your staff, and to have someone on the phone complaining or come in the office complaining we do nothing about the buskers on the seafront as per our policy will put them in a very stressful situation, which is more likely to result in a claim than anything else. It's not something I would recommend, and anything that goes against that I would require to be recorded in the minutes that I have given that advice, because if any claim does come about, I wouldn't want to be associated with that. The reputational damage as well of put the policy in place that basically we can't enforce is significant. It undermines all of your other policies if you have one policy where you say, we know we can't do it, but we're going to have this policy. It really does undermine your other policies. So I think there's 3 main issues there. And I've had a number of discussions. I said I've been busy this week. Surprisingly, probably more on this item than any other item on the agenda with councillors. And as a result of that, we did have a discussion with Councillor Layton earlier today. And I think there was a sort of a draft idea of a policy which is basically lifted the Brighton and Hove policy, which is that we have a tolerance system, which is what most people do have, most organisations now. The tolerance system is that the public are tolerant of a busker, but equally the busker is considerate of the public. And if someone comes along and says, "Can you move?" the busker should move. If they don't, then we couldn't do anything about it. So there's no point in saying we will do something about it, because we can't. The only enforcement is through the environmental health. If they are creating a noise that's intrusive, then environmental health will enforce as they would now. So it's just reflecting what is there. As we've already found by putting signs up saying you can't busk here, they just moved to a bit of land that we don't cover. That's happened exactly the same in Lewis when they tried to do it in Lewis. Those who are familiar with it, the precinct is owned by the district council, they banned busking there. So all the busker did was move 20 yards down the road and perform on the bridge. That doesn't belong to Lewis Council. So you just move the problem, and that happens everywhere. The other thing I have done is I have talked to a number of environmental officers to get their views on this, and this is one of the most difficult things to deal with because of the nature of the acts and performers. Even in Brighton, where they have 9 people, full-time officers dealing with environmental issues, they found it impossible to carry out enforcement with a busker who wouldn't take any notice of them over the Christmas period in the vicinity of the Churchill Square. Soon they go down, tell them to move. He'd move, or they would move, it was a band. As soon as he got back to the office, there'd be a phone call saying he's back. So they'd then go back down, tell him to move, he'd move, get back to the office. It was just backwards and forwards like a yo-yo. So they said when we do come to enforcement, it is a really impossible task to deal with. So even for them it's difficult, let alone us without any powers. So really what we're recommending is that we follow something more akin to what we talked about at Brighton and put the matter to bed, because I think we have spent and we have talked a lot about time and how much it costs to administer things. Heaven knows how much this has cost. It's time that we really put this to bed and didn't realise or raise expectations that we do something we just can't do.
Right, I've got Councillor Latham first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Initially, when I saw the town clerk's report, I was actually very concerned that the direction of the council made in October to proceed with the policy was not going to be complied with. And then I realised that, in fact, the report submitted as agenda item 15 actually really relates to buskers. And there are 2 items here. There's buskers and there's the Martello entertainment area. And what the town clerk is just suggesting is that we separate out buskers and have a separate guidance note, and you've got a copy of that, with regard to buskers, and that's the sort of hands-off, softly approach. But we also need the Martello entertainment area policy. We have paperwork for bookings for Seaford Town Council events and events booked through Seaford Town Council, but that policy does need a little updating. So what I would suggest is that we amend this recommendation or proposal to include buskers as proposed on the Brighton Hove model, but also to add that the Martello entertainment policy will be reviewed and updated as appropriate. And then I think it can be done quite quickly, bearing in mind what the town clerk has just said. Thank you.
Is that fine, the second? Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I don't know whether I'm reiterating what Councillor Latham's just said or not, because it's not quite clear to me, but just to clarify here, we are talking about the Martello Entertainment Area, which is a council-owned heritage property. We are not talking about the streets of town or where cases where entertainers will move 20 yards down the road. We're talking about a council-owned heritage property and performing on that location anyway. If then we want to include an amendment that goes town-wide, then that I think is a different matter. Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you. I'm a little bit confused. I'm sorry. Point 2, to agree to not proceed with any policy to govern entertainment on the Martello entertainment area. which then completely contradicts itself as far as I understand. And that organised entertainment takes place as and when booked by officers, as is the case elsewhere. In other words, to not have a policy, but to have a policy we've already got. It just doesn't. What's happening keeping the recommendations of 19th of October is my first question, because they seem to ensure compliance and not say too much different. So I don't understand why that's going out the window. Then, courtesy of one of the local complainants about the one particular bus room question, I know a lot of us got the email from. I have to ask, point 111, was the suggestion from the resident of painting a stage, was that resident town crier Peter White, who also happens to be on the working group that was subsequently established. 1.12, although we're anxious to keep buskers and the Martello entertainment areas separate, it says that Seaver Town Council don't own the shingle, and this lady has sent us all links to Crown Properties thing to show that they own the pink bit. So if we don't own it and they don't own it, who owns it, please? Because presumably they would be the ones that would have to complain to environmental health if someone was being awful on their property. And then two buskers have made it very clear that they do not plan ahead when busking, and not many do. 1.13, I think you've answered that. Your not many do has come from talking to other councils, hasn't it?
And other buskers.
And other buskers. Do you count a busker as a busker if they've brought their own amplification? Huh. Right, thank you.
Chair, for maybe that might help. I can pass that round. That's the landowner. I've got a couple I've passed around each way, I think. Sorry. The beach is not registered as owned by anybody. There is this issue around the high tide mark and where that exists to, because the high tide mark naturally would be the promenade. The shingle that is placed there changes the high tide mark, but only temporarily. So there's argument around where the high tide mark is. But we certainly have not got any of the beach in that area registered as ours. The piece that's green actually belongs to the Lewis District Council. But we are making, this is one of the parcels of land we think should have been transferred. So we are in the process of acting on that. But don't hold your breath, that'll probably take a year because we've got a lot of those that we're dealing with. So the ownership of the land is not ours. We're satisfied with that. We've got no registration whatsoever for that the beach. The point around the original report was that it required us to have a booking system for buskers, and that's not going to happen. The buskers are not going to book. So therefore we put the staff in a position where a busker appears, they haven't booked, remember the public complain, what do the staff do about it? They can't do anything about it. So that's the reason why we've gone back to what the original idea was that it's an entertainment area for booked performers, which would not be buskers, it would be bands, it would be singers, etc. And that would be covered by our events policy, which is under review. And is coming back to the council later in the year. It's one of the scheduled policies for review. It's not a specific Martello entertainment area policy, it's our events policy which covers booking performances all over our land. We wouldn't treat the Martello any different from anywhere else. That would just overcomplicate things. So that will be covered by the entertainment policy. The idea of the busker policy of right that was handed out is that just says we expect people to be tolerant, but equally we expect the buskers to be considerate. And that's all we can do. We can't do anything else. We haven't got the powers to do anything else.
Okay, I've got Councillor Foreman next. No? Councillor Brown?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do have permission to sit, by the way. I think I agree with what Councillor Latham and also Councillor Burfield was saying. We should separate these two policies out. Obviously there's not much we can do about busking except to have the town council staff refer to anybody who complains to the relevant authority. I think that would reduce that stress level. On the Martello Entertainment Area, it's taken 6 years to get here, 6 years of hard work by residents of Seaford to establish this entertainment area, and it is a responsibility of Seaford Town Council, and it worries me greatly if we don't have a policy to cover it, because we leave ourselves open to legal litigation. We've got enough litigation as it is. So maybe the policy needs to be quite drastically reviewed, but we should go ahead with the policy.
I've got Councillor Richard Hammond and Olivia Hammond next, and then I'll come back to Councillor Bertha White.
Can I go first?
Just a few minutes. Just to reiterate, right from the beginning of all this, all the residents ever wanted to know was when the people are going to be there. That's all they've ever really wanted to know, is when they're going to be performing. Other email that received about, that was forwarded on about Crown Estates, that was sent to one of the residents, and please be aware it says resident and we're just singular, and actually it's been quite a few residents that have complained. That they confirmed that this is the Crown Estates, that we only own the area that's coloured in pink, and in the area you have stated we only own sections of the foreshore. That is the area between high and low tide. We do not own the section of beach above the foreshore, which is there. The other comment I wanted to make as well is in the standard conditions of hire, there's no mention of amplification music or anything. So I just wondered if that's something that can actually be put into the standard conditions of hire. Oh, sorry, this bit here, the bit at the front, not the bit there, but the conditions at the back. I couldn't see anything there unless I missed it. But yeah, really just to reiterate that the residents really just wanted to know when this was happening.
Sure. A suggestion would be, if the residents want to know when it's going to happen, that the busker lets them know and they talk to the busker. And he sends them an email every time he's coming. There's about as much chance of that happening as there is of them booking. That's the problem. And we are then setting ourselves up for a fall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to elaborate slightly what Councillor Olivia Hammond did say about, and I mentioned it before. Councillors like to have their high-profile online booking calendars. I haven't looked on our website, mate. I don't know, have you improved it since the autumn? On the booking side?
It's always getting changed.
Right, so when obviously I agree with Councillor Latham and Councillor Brown, the idea of separating them out now, because the Martello area at this stage is the high profile, prominent area of that part of the city, which the town council actually owns anyway, basically most of it. So that area especially, there must be some sort of, it's not for the men or women to not actually get some sort of system in this day and age, so the resident can log on and they can check basically if it's going to be used officially in any capacity. I'm not sure where you are with that, because I mentioned it before and talked about it, but nothing went forward on that particular item. So that's one question. I agree with the buskers, the general buskers policy is quite good in a way. I don't know if as part of school improvement, seafront development improvement areas, town generally, are there any official buskers areas where if they can't make the MEA, they can, other parts down the town, has that ever been considered in the town that we could have a bit more semi-official but official sort of areas where buskers can actually have an alternative place to sort of entertain, in quotes. That's just an idea. I just thought, I don't know if it's ever been talked about, but if the seafront is going to be a little bit more prominent maybe in the future, maybe down the Salts end there could be something a little bit more official that side, but I'm not sure the beach hut people would be that keen, but that's another story. Thirdly and lastly, have you ever looked to see what the London Underground do with their busing system, and can you report back to that? I haven't actually, I just wondered if you looked into that.
Yeah, the Underground's a slightly different thing because they have obviously severe health and safety risks.
Yep.
So for that reason they've had to manage it a lot more stringently than probably anywhere else with the health and safety risks. There is a calendar on the website of all events, So anyone, and I go back to what I said originally, it's not proposed by officers to have an events policy for everywhere else except the Martello, and then have a separate policy which is exactly the same for the Martello. The events policy will cover all events, including the Martello, and therefore the rules for booking will be exactly the same for wherever you're booking an event. Bookings are on the website. So as soon as we, for example, as soon as we get a booking for a car boot sale, it goes on the website. They're all placed on there. This time of year, there's not many bookings on there because we updated in the end of February, early March, where we put the bookings on for the rest of the year, because we haven't got any bookings in January, February or March. They start in April really. So come the end of February, you will see the calendar fill up. So all bookings will be on there. The distinction is we can't put bookings on for buskers because buskers will not book. You know, so that's why we've got these two areas really muddied together, and it's impossible to have them two managed the same.
So just quickly come back to this one item. If I could just quickly, so at the MEA, and again it's something a lot of us councils have been involved with various capacities and sort of your residents and everything else. At the MEA, if there was no, it depends what you mean by booking, isn't it? Are you vetting members of the public, or can people just arrive? If they see no one there, can they just go on?
No,
like you see, that's a little bit confusion.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah. If it's a booking, i.e. an organised band who wants to come along would expect to book.
Absolutely.
You know, so something, use an example, say if it's Silver Band, they wouldn't expect to just turn up and just perform. They would expect to book, and they will book. So they will do the booking, the forms are there, it's online, you do it all online, we receive the form, we process it, we make sure we've got public liability, all the entertainments, everything's done. And then the booking goes, and then it goes in the diary. So that process is followed. But if someone just rocks up and wants to play the guitar there, that's not going to be done, you know, because they will not be booking. Best will in the world, a single entertainer who's a busker will not go through a booking process. I haven't found a single busker in the whole of Brighton who's ever booked. Ever. And I've talked to most of them.
I mean, that's what busking really is about. You just turn up. You don't you know, it's like they do in Broad Street. They just turn up. Right, Councillor Freeman.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is there any way of stopping buskers using the MEA to be full?
No. And in a way, I mean, this is the irony of the whole exercise. If you were going to choose somewhere where you wanted the busker to go to cause the least convenience to residents, you would say, would you please go there? Because that is especially if they're facing towards the sea, you've got a Napoleonic tower there that's been there for hundreds of years.
Because it seems that the problem is with unofficial.
Well, it is, but unfortunately, you know, the best place for them to be is there. But what we are saying is, we're not going to encourage them to go anywhere, just go where you choose. But going back to Councillor Honeyman's point about have we thought about allocated spaces, the trouble is we only have responsibility for our bits of land. Places like Brighton and Hove have experimented with the idea of having allocated spots, but they are the Highways Authority as well as the District Council, so therefore they're responsible for everything, all public land. But even they found that didn't work. So they just don't have a policy where you go, so long as you follow the rules. If a resident has to move because you're being too noisy for them, then move. And the buskers I spoke to in Brighton all say that, you know, as soon as we have to move, we'll move. None of them argue. Because it's not worth their hassle either. It was just this one occasion when the band came away from Brighton that they had problems this last year.
Councillor Burfield, did you want to come back?
Yes, please. I'm almost raising a point of order, I believe, because this council agenda item and the report associated with it is specific to Martello Entertainment area, and there isn't actually much mention of buskers in it at all. Buskers is merely what's brought the issue to prominence. And I'm very relieved to hear from the town clerk this evening that there will be a review of the events policy. Because I think this is more about an events policy than it is about busking. Busking is a separate issue which we should address another time. Because it's not even mentioned in this agenda item.
It is on 12 or 13.
Okay, could I just come back on that? Busking is not, although it's not separate insofar as this whole issue arose because of a busker or two down at the Martello Entertainment area, causing query and nuisance. So it's reasonable that we have been focusing on this individual, this busker, and all the while in the background there has been the Martello Entertainment area booking procedure, but not a formal policy. And there does need, I agree, to be a formal policy. But the busking part, the Brighton and Hove model, can be included in that. If you are a busker, this applies to you.
Thank you. So, are you being asked to vote tonight on the Martello Entertainment area or busking policy?
I think what we're suggesting, okay, I think, that's when you muddy the waters again. And we also get in the position of, we don't want, yeah, I think what we're saying is that we review the events policy as per the schedule, in being cognizant of the bookings for the Martello Entertainment area in doing that. And we also bring back a busking policy for adoption at a later date as well. And I think, unless there's any views to the contrary, I will bring back the one that's being presented tonight to councillors. But they should be kept very separate.
Separate, but can go in the same document, can't they?
No, I will keep them very, very separate, because I think that's where all the confusions are arisen.
Because other councils, what they've done is that they've included something like this in their policy document. If you are a busker, this applies to you.
Yeah, I would prefer to keep them very separate, because then we can have that. The beauty of the good thing that I found with the Brighton example is that it's very user friendly. If you Google busking Brighton, it takes you straight to the page on their website where there's a clear policy that just covers busking. And I think that's what I would like us to have. So that someone Googles busking Seaford, they go straight to a busking Seaford page, and they don't have to read through bookings. Because as soon as a busker sees bookings, he'll switch off.
Okay, so, yeah,
right, so I think the proposal is that we review the events policy to take into account the Martello Tower, and we present a busking policy for adoption at a later date. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah, very clever.
Proposed by Councillor Borman.
Second that.
Councillor Elton's beat you to it. And can I have a show of hands, please? And those against? Abstentions?
James, I'm just going out.
Agenda item 16, exclusion of the press and public. To move that in accordance with the Public Office Administration, addition to meetings, press and public on the listing during the discussion of one item
You're going to throw us out.
Excuse me, councillors have not voted on the exclusion of the press and public.
Okay, we guessed that. Thanks for throwing us out.
Please,
Good night, everyone.